Yesterday, I had the distinct pleasure of speaking with Wes from ThinkingCritical, and if you guys know anything about him, it's that he is one of the most prolific voices in this YouTube community and in the comic book community as well, and was actually one of the first channels that I was ever introduced to, honestly, after watching his video discussing Robert Venditti's Hawkman run. So I was over the moon ecstatic to talk about this topic with him, which you guys will see now. So without further ado, here is my discussion with Wes. Man, I am extremely honored to have Wes from ThinkingCritical here on the channel. As you guys heard in the intro, Wes was one of the first channels that I ever listened to, and really how I got started in this comic book community and this fellowship. And so I'm extremely grateful for his time. And essentially what we're going to be talking about today is comic books and the industry itself, because in my experience, I feel like I've really enjoyed reading the comic books, the stories, the characters, and what that brings to my level of like sanity, I guess. But right now we're seeing that there's so much polarization in the comic book community and in the industry itself that I wanted to get Wes's take on this, because he really is one of the largest voices on YouTube when it comes to comic books and the industry in itself. So I'm going to list off a few things, Wes, and stop me if you hear something that you want to talk about. But yeah, so the grand scheme of things, we've got paper shortages, distribution issues, creator and company resentment towards fans, focuses on agenda and identity politics rather than story and character development, price hikes and inflation in local comic shops and on the secondary market, long CGC, CBS, any type of grading, long wait times for those, marketing techniques that turn into just publicity stunts. Where is all this going? What's the end game, and what do you see this happening, or where do you see this happening, like in the industry, I guess?
Well, it definitely feels like I love comic books, and reading and kind of covering it as much as you, but I'm kind of as frustrated as you and kind of everybody else are. But it definitely feels like an unhealthy, unstable comic book industry, because we do have things that are outside the control, obviously, of the industry. You've got these paper shortages going down. Certainly these price hikes are probably going to have to come in unison with the paper stuff that's going on there. But there's also those price hikes because they've kind of shrunk their readership at the same time. So you've got these things that are outside their control, but you have all these things that are almost self-inflicted wounds within the industry. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of grasping at straws. Then you get more desperate creators, and you get this real polarization, which we're seeing throughout, culture right now, whether it's politics, sports, everything's so polarized. And when you come to comic books, this is supposed to be your escape, right? Yeah. I don't want to hear about all this weird, crazy crap that's going on outside. It's dominating, the airwaves. You can't even watch ESPN and get away from this stuff. Can I open a DC or Marvel comic and get away from it? And I think it's one of the things that's kind of been lost lately is there's no innocence left anymore. There's no corner where you can go and go find something to kind of take your mind off of all the things that are going on. And I think that's ultimately to the detriment of all forms of entertainment, but specifically comic books. And when you talk about some of the things going on with like marketing, this stuff's been going on since the 90s. Obviously, they made a bet. As far as where the industry was going, they decided they were going to bet on specialty stores. And I love comic shops, but they decided to price things up. They were going to create their own, kind of collectibles, and they kind of drove kids out of it. They overpriced it, and now we're everything's got a variant cover. Everything's got to have an event. The event cycles get faster and faster and faster, and now those aren't quite as effective. You can't just have a variant cover. You got to have ratio variants. So you build in some scarcity to it. with the high profile artists or like a reprint or something like that. Well, these things are being less successful. I mean, they are still successful. So now you've got to do enormous changes in the character. You got to do gender swaps, sexuality swaps, and all these things. And the the gimmicks are getting more and more desperate to get people into the comic shop to actually buy the comics. And the impression I get, and I think a lot of people is that it's not even the readers that are propping up the industry right now. It's speculators and people going in and thinking that they're buying some type of collectible that's going to have like a long time value to it, or flippers, try to kind of take advantage of the market, and that's never healthy. It just isn't.
And there's so much that I could go into on each one of those points that you were just talking about. But one of the things that really hit me was, this is a place, at least it should be a place of escapism, a point of where you can kind of drown out the outside world and follow your favorite heroes on their next adventure, whether that's through space, through time, whatever it is. And now it feels like so much of what we see in today's society and today's culture is just put into the comic. And I know that you're a big movie buff, and whether it's comics or movies or whatnot, whenever that's inserted forcefully into any type of media or entertainment, the fans tend to reject that. And I think rightfully so, because in an escapist or in a escapism entertainment type of medium, they want to get away from that purposefully, and so it's a shame that we're kind of, what I think is a shame is that people are rejecting the fact that that it's not turning into an agenda, because all signs point to this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to take away the escapism route. I don't think necessarily all creators, but definitely corporate heads and editorial staffs, creators and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's strange, when you think about the fandom, when we're getting together and we're having debates, should we be debating about the budget that's going on, or what they're gonna do in Congress? We should be debating about who's stronger, Hulk or Superman. There are all these stupid, nerdy comic book debates that we should be having, and it's like it ruins the fandom. And there's I think there's an idea maybe from the publishers and some of the creators that it's only one side that doesn't like it because it's not their side that's kind of being presented in there. I have plenty of viewers I know on my channel that regularly speak out. They're not conservative. They're not Republicans. They're liberals. They're left leaning. Me personally, I'm not a card carrying Republican. I'm not really into politics. I think politics are kind of all bad. I'm a independent, conservative leaning, but kind of in the middle type of person. And I would personally just like to not have to deal with any of this crap, for the most part, unless push comes to shove and you have to be in the part of the debate. But when you're into your hobby, you don't want that stuff. And it's turning everybody off except for this little bitty, maybe 5% of the fandom, probably less than that are on Twitter that just sit there and apparently they're the only voices that matter when it comes to the future of the comic book industry, or these characters, what they're able to do with them, because they're the only audience out there that they're writing anything for. And it gets frustrating after a while, especially a lot of people maybe put decades into these characters and these universes of supporting them, and to feel like you're kind of being brushed aside or kind of put out to pasture for this new audience, that there's no data out there that states that they even support the comics with their money. They seem to only support it with claps and attaboys,
right?
Which really, they don't mean that. You can't live on that stuff.
Yeah, you can't live off of retweets, that doesn't bring in any type of income. And, guys, if you are watching and you haven't checked out Thinking Critical and Wes over on his channel, he actually has 2 videos on this topic that we just spoke about. The first one about just debates and how in your local comic shop, which, Wes, you are in a location where local comic shops just aren't a thing. I mean, you can't really go there every Wednesday and have those, hey, who's stronger, Superman or Hulk? And that's kind of the lifeblood of what brings comic book fans together. And to not have that and have debates of, am I going to spend $10 on this Wonder Woman comic? Do I really want to drop $10 every week or $8 every week to get Batman story for 15 pages, and then a Robin story for 5 pages, and then a Midnighter story for 4 pages. Do I really want to put in that kind of money for these backstories and whatnot? And then the other thing, like you said, is the clout on Twitter that people hold. It almost feels like they are trying to please that crowd and not listen to and say that fans, the actual fans, are toxic. And there's only a certain amount that fans can take before they become apathetic towards that saying, or towards that ideal, or that ideology that these people hold. But like I said, if you guys haven't checked out Wes's channel, he actually just recently, I think this past week, Wes, you put out the most recent one, or maybe it was today, about Twitter, or not Twitter, but just how you can't appease to these two different archetypes of fans. You're either going to appease one and hurt the other, or vice versa. But one, like you said, is maybe less than 5%. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's insane that we've gotten here, but I understand. There have been a lot of studies that they've done, clinical studies about the effects of social media on people and their behavior. And likes are dopamine dopamine hits, retweets are dopamine hits. And if you're a creator out there and you've introduced the first trans character in Themyscira into the Amazon lore, as a comic creator, I'm saying I don't get this. I would like this explained, because it doesn't seem to make sense in my mind. Mm-hmm. But as that creator, if you get 500 dopamine hits, it feels like you're really successful, even though the rest of the fandom sit there going, I don't get that. That doesn't seem to make sense. You're going to have to explain a little bit more. And then, once you've had all the people, you give you the claps or whatever, and someone says, this doesn't sound right. Well, now that feels like hate, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Any type of criticism is hate, right?
That was the big debate with that video that you had done about the new character on Themyscira, which you rightfully so criticized, and you just said, I didn't enjoy the comic. But to a lot of people,
I didn't even go that far. I hadn't read it. I just talked about the social media release from the writer, and I said, how do you get a trans woman on Themyscira that doesn't fit in with the lore? And I said, what are the issues with the writer, Vita Ayala, is that they do a lot of self-insert characters, because Vita Ayala is non-binary. You get a lot of these type of injections of these characters into the universe, and eventually, that stuff gets old. When you do the same trick over and over and over, it gets predictable. And that was my criticism. I didn't even say this can't happen. I said, I don't know enough about Wonder Woman for me to disprove this, but it feels wrong. Could you explain it to me? That was hate.
And that was considered hateful towards that specific group, to the creator herself or themselves. And so it was extremely out of context, and I don't even think they watched.
There's no way they watched that video, because I didn't really criticize
exactly.
That much.
If they were to actually watch it, it would have been, they could have come to the natural conclusion, which is, you're curious about, you wanted to ask the questions about, how does this work? How does this happen? But God forbid we actually do that, because that, like you said, is considered hate.
Well, I will go hard in the paint on stuff that I know.
Right. And
I'm absolutely certain on, but I can't go hard in the paint on stuff. I don't know Wonder Woman lore as much as other people. Right. I wasn't able to be like super definitive on that one. It seemed like Just Some Guy was way more definitive than I was. They were upset about him.
your stuff, well, Just Some Guy did an incredible kind of breakdown of the Well of Souls and everything, and how it, like, based off of the comic book logic, it wouldn't be able to happen and everything.
Yes. If I watched that beforehand, I would have had a much more definitive opinion.
That's true. You do have a pretty definitive opinion on Tom Taylor, though, and his Superman, and I completely agree with you. And that's the difference. Is like, I've seen videos of you where you have been like, this is not how to write a character, and then videos where you've taken more of a deliberate approach of saying, you know what, let me just ask a couple of questions because I'm not really sure. And so you can tell when, you know, there's one or the other, when you feel a certain type of way. And yeah, when Clark Kent essentially just said, I think it was in the second issue of you know, the new Superman title that's coming out, Son of Kal-El.
I always felt like I was a stranger on this planet. I didn't think I could help too much.
Yeah, stranger on this.
That was the worst.
Where he's like looking at the world with John, and they're sitting there talking, bantering back and forth, and I'm just like, all of this is nonsense. So yeah, I think you do a very, very you know, excellent job at kind of having the delineations between the two, and yet still it's considered as hate speech. So and that's another thing that I didn't even have on here. I guess that can go into, you know, when I say creator and company resentment towards fans, I guess it kind of narrows it down into that area of
definitely doesn't exist. It does feel like that Marvel and DC, they would replace you and I with anybody in the world if they could. Yeah. Like, we are the last people in the world that they want supporting their comic book, that they have to keep as part of their customer base or their fandom for their characters. And it's so disrespectful. It's so short-sighted, and it makes no sense.
Right.
You know, you have people, you know, that put, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, you know, decades of fandom, like, know these characters inside and out, and you just want to throw them out because they don't meet the right demographic. It's like, oh, these Gen Xers, they're aging out. I'm 43. I got plenty of time to read comic books.
Yeah.
And I have 3 kids, 6 years and under, who I'm certainly going to be influenced by reading comic books with.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like my days of reading comic books or having any type of influence of the next generation are out there. So there's no reason that it has to be spiteful. There's no reason that it has to be contentious. Like, if someone gives you criticism, you say, well, I appreciate the feedback. Let me consider that while I look at the story. You don't just go, well, you're a hateful bigot.
Mm-hmm. Because it automatically puts you on the defensive, and then you go,
yes, it's adversarial.
Comics, yeah, and you go, well, comics aren't a necessity here, right? I mean, it's not sustenance. It's not something I need on a daily basis. It's something I enjoy and something that I want to collect and be in the hobby for. So if you were going, if you feel that, you know, that kind of aggression towards just something that you love, why are you going to stay in it? And so, it's
why
very,
am I spending money to feel bad?
Exactly. When I read something, I go, wait, I'm the enemy in this story, or like I'm the villain in this story? Why am I?
You imagine Doug Ertz when he got that issue of Moon Knight and they named a villain after him and made him a Nazi?
Or you know, Jordan Peterson being Red Skull and you know, in the Captain America book. It's like you never would expect yourself.
It's the worst thing, you know, I'm not the biggest Jordan Peterson fan, but if you read that book, it's just common sense stuff. It's like, clean up your room.
Yeah.
Be nice to people.
100%.
Like,
One of the
apparently.
One of the chapters is, if you see a cat on the street, pet it, or something like that. You know, like just very sweet,
the most
inoffensive
stuff ever. It's like common sense, you know, idioms to think about in your daily life.
And so I guess that kind of brings me to kind of where the conclusion of this all comes to is, with all of this, and with people kind of almost feeling tired, worn out, criticized, anything that, you know, anything that you can think of within the industry now, where do we go from here? You know, where do you see, is this something that the fans are going to have to kind of decide with their wallet whether they want to continue to support these creators, or is it something that the creators are going to have to come to a point and say, listen, we're not really doing our job here. Our job is to tell stories, is to give enjoyment to kids, adults, you know, because I'm sure the larger portion of who is buying comics right now are, you know, men and women our age, and maybe even not as many women, but definitely men. And, you know, like we were talking about before the video, a lot of military men. I'm Marine Corps. You were prior Air Force, so yeah, it's really interesting to see how, like, where the demographic is, but I'm not really sure where we go from here. And so I was wondering if you might have anything on that.
Well, you definitely got to enjoy the fandom, make your friends, to talk about these things, and realize who you're talking to. And some people are, you can disagree on these things and still be friends. We could disagree on the future of comic books and not hate each other. We need to realize that. But there are tremendous amounts of alternatives to reading modern DC and Marvel. You can go out there and you can be an indie guy. There's certainly a lot of very high-selling, thriving indie comic books out there, especially from Boom Studios and Image Comics. You can go to the crowdfunding scene if you're more into maybe supporting the creator more than the characters. You got Tim Lim, you got EVS, you got Richard Meyer, you got Brian Polito, you got all these people that are doing great stuff on there, and you can see the sales every year on those get bigger and bigger. That market's growing every single year. Will it ever be competitive with the direct market? I don't think so. But hey, DC and Marvel's definitely given them the opportunity to do so. But you know what's weird is if you look at what DC and Marvel would like with their demographics, there's a comic book market that has their demographics, and they sell to them. And they sell more than they could ever want to. It's called manga. And you know what manga doesn't do? Any of the stuff that Marvel and DC are doing.
Zero. Absolutely zero. They just tell, I remember reading, I've got behind me all kinds of, I have Blade down here of the Immortal. I've got Berserk on my other shoulder over here. And those were fantastic. Like, those were real stories and characters that I actually wanted to follow, and the stories in those books are timeless.
There's an androgynous character that would feel like, in the US market as non-binary. It doesn't matter, because they didn't say you need to read Berserk because there's a non-binary character. You read Berserk and there's an awesome character that happens to be non-binary.
Right, the story didn't focus.
Click. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. It didn't focus mainly on, well, we're going to tell the story arc of how this character decided to be non-binary or something. It was just, this character happens to be this way, like you said, but is
those things
huge
are
part.
all in there, but they don't turn you off because that's not how they're selling the book.
Right. It
doesn't feel like an agenda. If you're a DC and Marvel guy, go to your dollar bins. I'm telling you right now, you can go read the most nondescript 1980s Green Lantern story compared to whatever's going on today. It's going to feel like a classic. It is.
And like you said, not only just the dollar bins in the back of the local comic shops, but these crowdfunding campaigns are great. I believe Perch just helped one come out $10. And that's including shipping. You know what I mean? That's great. So the prices are going down a little bit. I know Eric Canetti, I think you had him on your channel at one point, an incredible creator who already has the books pretty much done, inked, written. They are ready to go. And all you have to do is back to project, and those books are being sent to you. It's very, like you said, Marvel and DC is making it very easy for these other companies, these other creators to kind of come into the fold and say, well, if you don't like this, maybe try this. And I think another one that I wanted to mention was the indie comics that are publishers that you can still find in your local comic shop. But like one that I remember reading is Echo Lands, that's coming out right now, which is fantastic. The artwork is incredible. Ultra Mega, which was another beautiful comic book, one of the most creative things I've ever read in this year. And I know that you were,
that first issue was a swerve. When you get to the end, you're like, that's not the hero. Oh, it's this kid.
That was wild. Yeah, I mean, talk about a subversion, but it's a subversion that keeps you interested,
Oh yeah, this is a great setup.
Absolutely. And then I know that you're a big fan of the We Live series. And so there are...
That one's coming back soon.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah, the sequel's coming back in 2022. They did a We Live free comic book day from the Moreno brothers from Aftershock Comics to introduce the second chapter.
I'll have to add that to the poll then. Got to put that on. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate you coming on the channel. Like I said, it is an honor to have you on. Being one of the first channels I've ever watched is really cool to now actually get to talk to you and talk about one of our favorite things, which is comic books. So.
Well, I appreciate the invite. I'm glad I was able to come on here. I love talking about comic books, and I'm glad that you were able to discover the channel, and we can talk about comic books and all that stuff. And definitely, hopefully, we'll get you on the Comics Aficionados if you're available on a Saturday sometime, so we could talk about nerd stuff for a couple hours.
Oh, absolutely, man. It would be my pleasure. That's my Saturday morning, coffee show that I tune into. So, but yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Wes, do you have anything coming out this week or anything that you'd like to plug before I head out?
Okay, so I do have a video about the 5 things that I want from my comic books, which kind of gleans more into the things that I really look for in comic books that I think really work for me. So that one's going to be fun. I've also got, what else I got? Oh, I have a great conversation with Gervais Dargan about whether or not chivalry is dead. Not exactly a comic book conversation, but definitely one for the times. And obviously Saturday, the Comic Aficionados, it sounds like Chuck Dixon will be joining us this Saturday to talk about all things nerd on Saturday morning. So those are the 3 big things that I've got coming up.
I cannot wait to hear what Chuck Dixon has to say, and Gervais too, because my last live stream, actually last night, was about McKenna, who is my co-host on that. We were actually talking about chivalry and do we think it's dead right now? And also what is going on with the male characters in entertainment? Is there being a subversion of male characters? And where has modern masculinity gone? So I'm really looking forward to what you and Gervais have to talk about. We go on
for about 50 minutes. So. It's pretty funny.
Can't wait. Well, like I said, man, thank you so much for coming on. It means the world. And yeah, hopefully I can have you on another time, or we'll see each other on Comics Aficionados. But until then, have a good rest of the day. And yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks.